Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm glad you're here. And I'm between guests this week, and so I was going to share about some of my experience with ancestors and something that might be helpful to you in my perception of the afterlife. And so I'll share a little bit of my background for those who haven't seen it or heard me talk about it before. And so I have a college degree in horticultural therapy, and I've worked in that field. I've worked in real estate and insurance as a real estate broker. I've worked in as a nursing home administrator for a number of years. And then I found Biofield Tuning, and I'll skip all the details that led from one into the other and stuff. So I have had a big background in using my mind and making things work and not in the intuitive that I know of. But my mom tells the story of when I was 4 years old, and we lived way out in the country, and she knew there hadn't been anyone drive up the driveway, and so I had been playing in the backyard, and I came running to where she was and said, "Hey, there's this man with me in the backyard." So again, she knew no one was there, and so immediately she responded that it's Jesus. And she had never gone to church. She wasn't raised in any religion, and so it had surprised her. She said when that was her answer to me, and then I ran back to talk to the man some more. And since then, I'd found that it wasn't Jesus, but it was an angel talking to me. And so I had seen him at that point and could hear him and listen and stuff. And when I was very young, also, I know I had talked to trees all the time. But then, school started and life happened. And so fast forward up until um, I was in my 50s. And all of a sudden, then all these things that happened in our life to compile to, I kind of hit my emotional bottom. Always before, when I'd had difficulties, I pushed through, but I just couldn't push any further. I pushed all that I could push because there'd been number of years of difficulties. And so that's what brought me into biofield tuning. I wanted to find something that could heal how I felt inside all my life of sadness and fear. And so anyway, I'd found biofield tuning, and I ordered my forks and practiced at home, and then went to the class. And I was only home about a week, maybe, when all of a sudden, beside learning biofield tuning, I'd also been just doing some of my own reading and research on how the mind works. I was trying to understand how I'd come to have these emotions, these feelings all my life, how our mind worked and things. And I'd learned that up until we're about age 7, the mind accepts everything that it hears as truth because it didn't have the capabilities or the life experiences to compare things through to and try to decide which was true and which wasn't. And so this made sense to me, but my mind then went to having been raised in a church to how did so that's what happened to Eve in the Garden of Eden, whatever, if the story was true or just an allegory or whatever. But she had believed these lies told from the serpent in the tree and caused the fall of man, according to the story. And so, anyway, but that made sense. They had just got to the Garden of Eden, according to the story. And so her brain, even though she was an adult, her brain was in this receptive mode of receiving things as true because it didn't have all there was to experience it to. That's how I viewed it. And so I thought, well, that's what happened to her. So it wasn't her fault that she had um, come to believe lies. It's just that her brain didn't work and she didn't have stuff to compare it to. And so that made sense because I wasn't to blame for my life either. All these things that I'd felt before. And so, anyway, so I was just talking to the universe, talking to God or source energy, and saying, well, I don't know if Eve's in heaven or if what happened. I'd heard other people say the dead continue in the world around us. And I said, I don't know, but if she can hear me and if she's in heaven, I want her to know that I understand that it wasn't her fault. And then all of a sudden, there was an angel, a big angel, like 12, 15 foot tall, right beside me. And I wasn't scared or anything. I didn't see it, but the presence was so overwhelming, and my eyes could track exactly where it was. And I had the inner knowing then that she knew. And so I went ahead in this conversation with Source and with the angel. And then about an hour later, I was still thinking and talking about this. And I had thought, well, as spirit beings, then, so if there are the spirit beings either in heaven or the world around us, it was like, I know my body is greatly affected by electromagnetic frequencies that aren't helpful. And so I thought, them, just as being spirit beings, they're bound to be very um, affected by it too. So I thought, well, I could practice biofield tuning on them and help them establish a better voltage also. And I was thinking, especially of those in heaven, or the oneness, as I was calling it. And so I told then the universe, well, I want to do this, but I want to know if they're okay with that, if that's what they want. And all of a sudden, then orbs of light appeared. I could see it out of the corners of my eye in a full circle, about 20 feet around me. And this loud, resounding yes. My Again, my physical ears didn't hear it, but my inner being heard this and felt their vibration, and it wasn't just me, it was coming from them. And so I had started with this, and I had tuned the hologram of those in the oneness a few times. And it was about a month later by that time, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, and my grandfather appeared right beside me, and my mom's father, and said, I want to go to the oneness, but I need your help. And it was like, from my Christian upbringing, this was kind of taboo to me. And I was scared because I thought, well, what's going on? Can I trust them if they're not in heaven yet? And because I knew that once they're in heaven, they would have the mindset then of God, they would not have the control and coercion and mindset of lack and things that can influence our minds and influence how we live as humans. And I figured once you die, you'd still have that unless you were in the oneness, and then you would have the mind wipe or something like from Star Trek, and not necessarily all your memories, of course, but just have the mindset then of God, of the abundance, and everyone is equal, and that type of mindset, and you could trust them. And so anyway, I saw my grandfather there, but again, my eyes didn't see him, but my eyes could track exactly. I knew exactly where he was. I felt this presence right there. And so beside my eyes tracking them, my inner eye saw him. He was 92 when he died, about 20 years earlier, or 25 years earlier from that moment. But this in my kitchen, he didn't look 92. He was more like his 50 or 60 at that time, but it was still him. He was dressed in his farmer overalls, and his vibration was my grandpa. And so I'd said, well, because I wanted to help him, but I was scared. But it was like, well, what can I do to help you, right? And I don't know anything. This is my first experience with the dead, basically. And so he said, well, use your tuning forks. And so then I had asked Source, or asked the universe, well, um, shall I do I tune grandpa's energy by itself, or do I tune his energy that I'm made of? And so the answer was to tune him in me. And at that time, I wasn't working in the ancestral biofield at all. I was just working in the ancestral river, which is streams of energy that run on either side of your body that contain the DNA information of our ancestors. And it runs from when life began to when life ends, and so it goes from our ancestors to our descendants. And so I was working in the ancestral river as well as my biofield, and I was just overwhelmed with his sadness from when his older son died in a car accident a few years before I was born. And so I just cleared. I just worked and I cleared, and I felt it clearing in grandpa and clearing in me. And then after, then I left the room because I didn't know what to do when I was done. And he followed me to where I was and said, thank you. And then he left. And that's all I knew. But I thought, well, if all my sadness and everything was carried by grandpa, then there's probably other things that I experienced that's carried in my other ancestors. So obviously, I would have to heal them to heal me. And so that's how I started. And I systematically went through, hello there in the chat. And I systematically went through all my grandparents and great grandparents back to 5 generations, because I felt I was blessed. Both sides of my family had done some genealogy work, and I just always heard stories and knew about these ancestors and the lives they lived. And so anyway, that's how I started clearing an ancestral clearing, was clearing the ancestors in me. And I was also starting to work with clients, and I would experience the same thing in when I worked in their biofields. And whether in mine or in theirs, I was consistently being pulled out to work into beyond space, beyond our own biofield, beyond the individual field. And I didn't know what was happening. And so I had asked some other tuners um, to see what they knew about it. And a lot of people knew nothing. It wasn't something that was taught, but a few people were aware, and they told me about the ancestral field. And then I went on to experience more. So that's how my work with ancestors started. And then in different of my grandparents, I would find the different things that I had struggled with in my life. And not everything, I should say, not all of my old patterns or my reactions were cleared in one tuning with them. Some of the ancestors needed more than one tuning, especially my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who carried so much sadness, both from her mother dying when she was young to her older son dying a few years before I was born. And anyway, what was I going to say? So there. But with each one, then it was like I could help them go to the oneness. Well, I didn't know at first. It was like I would clear them, and sometimes these ancestors then would stand in my room. I could tell they're this there, and they were waiting for something, or it seemed like, and they were. And then I would say, "Well, you have to go now because I don't need you in my house. I'm doing this other stuff. You need to go wherever you go." And and so anyway, then they would have this response of, I could kind of see in my mind, it was like, huh, kind of unreal. And so then a few weeks or months later, I had found out, well, I have the a positive ley line vortex in this room where I work, and saw their found where the ley lines cross in the house, and found out then that that's one way that ancestors can transition to the next realm, is through positive ley line vortexes. And so anyway, then I started from them, helping them holding that intention to help them transition into the oneness through the ley line. And I found out later that, like my grandfather or some of the ancestors, at that point, when they were cleared and could go, they could go to the nearest one, which their angel would help them find, or they could go to whichever one they wanted to transition. And my grandfather had picked the one that was on the farm, the farm he had lived on most of his life, and that I also had been there very often during my life. And so, anyway, so I'll start then with my experiences with ancestors. And so, even though I'll just repeat a little bit, even though I don't see them with my physical eyes, there's something about my physical eyes that tracks all their energy. I see where they walk, I see how tall they are. Babies are often crawling on the floor, and I see that. And so that's the visual. Again, my ears don't hear, but I hear their voices inside. The way I describe it, or I think of it, is that my biofield feels their vibration of their emotions and their thoughts. And so then when my biofield feels that, then my brain interprets it into words that I understand. And so I hear their voices inside and can talk to them. And so, anyway, I'll start. One of my experiences with people who just recently pass away is a little different. Their energy, I should say, is a little different. It's usually very statically. Their emotions are very, very strong. Sometimes they're very scared. They don't know, it wasn't what they thought of the afterlife, if they thought of it at all. And suddenly they're thrown into this without the physical body, and they can't talk to their family and things, and they're scared. They don't know what to do. And so that's uh, that's some of them that have recently died. Others that more recently died that I've been in contact with are not scared. It kind of depends on what their mindset was when they were living. Like if they were more of a skittish or nervous or fearful person, then they're going to be that way in the afterlife. And the others, like my grandfather had said, I asked him, well, what did he do when he had died? How did he uh, learn about the afterlife or whatever? And he says, I watched and learned. Well, and that was my grandfather through his life. He was always learning. He never watched fiction. He never read fiction. It was always things he could learn from. And so he just watched. He was very calm. And some other people that I've had this, if they're newly dead, just a few hours or a few days, their energy is very much more intense. It's kind of scattered, as if like they haven't really learned yet how to travel places, with their mind or in person. And so they're kind of pulled from one place to the other, um, and not really necessarily frantic or scared like some people are, but it's just an energy thing that it's kind of like it's coming and going, but yet their emotions are still intense, and they haven't learned how to focus their thoughts on communication and things, is what it seems to me like. After other people, after they've been gone a few months to uh, a year or so, are much more calm. Their energy is stable. Some are ready to go at that point, but they can't go through me. They need their help of their um, direct descendants, if that's available, or adopted people where they were the father or mother or grandparent in their lives, for that higher voltage vibration, where their energy is within that person, their DNA, and so it's a higher voltage. And especially when there was a relationship there and they knew the person, then it's a much higher voltage. Knowledge is power, right? And so if they know those persons, that voltage is higher. And so that's how I have felt the energies of ancestors, people who have died, who have recently died. What I also had learned, and this was through my father, because he had died, and so I was asking him about what happened at his death. And so he said his angel met him at the point of death. And since I have found out since then, there are at the point of death, there are two things that you need, the ancestors need at that point to be able to transition to the oneness at that time. And that is, they need to have the heart's or the soul's desire to be part of the oneness, or to know that God. It's our response to that electromagnetism within us. The Since we're part of Source, it's that magnetism of all the parts for the whole, and the whole for all the parts. And so, uh, if we have that desire to know, we feel that magnetism, so to speak, and we have the heart's desire, then that's one of the things. The other thing is that we have to consciously choose to go. And so, even though some people are perhaps ready at death, but they think that they can help others in the waiting place, I call it, in the realm of nature around us. So they think they can help more there, which from my experience is not true. Once ancestors go to the oneness, their help is very much more powerful than it is than if they stay. But this is at the point of death, so some of them want to stay to help their loved ones there, um, even if they have the desire to go to the oneness, or that heart's desire. And other times, they're not ready. They don't have those two things at the time of death, and then so they stay in the realm of nature around them. But if they have those two things, because my dad did, he said um, he ha- I knew my dad had that desire, and the angel had asked him if he wanted to go or not, and so he did. And so he had gone through the nearest ley line. He died in a hospital, and so he didn't care at that point where he went from. He didn't know where any other ley lines might be, so he just went. And probably it was because all of us were right there too at the hospital, and so he had gone to the nearest one. And so ancestors there at the time of death, from my perception, my experience, have that choice. If they have those two things, the desire, the heart's desire deep in their soul to know source energy, to know God, to be one with the universe, however that feels. There's different aspects to it, but it all comes down to that, the deep heart's desire, and to make a conscious choice. So then, through my work then of clearing myself through my ancestors, and as well as my clients' work, this interaction with ancestors continued, and I was eventually led then and learned, both through my work and through asking questions of the spirit beings in the oneness. I used hypnosis and meditation as ways to interact and connect with that energy and ask my questions that I had. And so I have written the book, in case anyone didn't know, and the link is down below, but it's Ancestral River, A Spiritual Journey for the Living and the Dead. And it tells a lot of these stories that I'm talking about today. And it tells of my experiences with ancestors up to the point I read it, of course. And there's always new things and changes afterwards. And so some ancestors, the way they all ancestors appeared to me anyway, those who are in the waiting place around us, are like, I see them in grayscale. They're not vibrant colored energy like we are. And again, that goes back to the five things they need as they and one of those is knowledge of how the afterlife works, and knowledge of yourself, right? And So as your knowledge grow, as your desire for the oneness grows, as you become more willing to make that conscious choice and the other two factors, then their voltage grows and they're no longer quite in grayscale, so that by the time they're actually transition oh, excuse me, I got hiccups. By the time they're actually transitioning then into the oneness, then their voltage is much higher. I don't feel it as strongly as the negative that I feel before, when they're not ready. Like when I first started doing this work, most of the ancestral energy was very, very negative and grayscale. And anyway, sometimes I would just see them as kind of orbs of light. Otherwise, I would see them in how they were dressed, as how they dressed in their lives, like I described about my grandfather, who I saw him in farmer's overalls because he was a farmer all his life. But sometimes I would see them, like if ancient ancestors, see them in soldier garb, or in the fancy dresses, or in suits and ties or something. And but it was what I how I have the concept of how I see them, because of course they would not need clothing once they're just a spirit being, right? Because they would just be light. I see them as part of my mind interpreting their energies and seeing my inner vision. I'm seeing how their mind clothes them in how they were in the hierarchical mindset. And so um, that's part of the hierarchical mindset. Once they're the mindset of God, then they're the bright white orbs or light, and would or the angels, again too, is just light, in my perception or in my experiences. And so um, but the ancestors then I see in grayscale and very low voltage, and that voltage grows over time as they come to have those five things they need and then are able to transition. And okay, so gonna and if you remember, or if you were here when I started talking about my grandfather, who, even though he was 92 when he died, when he appeared to me, I perceived him as being like age 50 or 60. Babies also are young children. Young children can appear as young adults, instead of just their age when they died. Babies can sometimes appear as young children instead of just babies. That's been my perception of things. Often, the babies, most often, they crawl across the floor, and often they want hugs. And so that's fun, to hug them back. But um, other times, let's see, like the young children, often if they're like a toddler age, I see them. Sometimes they come by themselves. Sometimes they come at the same time as, say, their mother who died. Um, that was one of my ancestors. At that experience, both the mother and the baby had died within a week of each other of typhoid fever. And so they appeared also here in my home to transition, and the toddler sometimes then was like this toddler was, but I've seen it at other times, like hides behind the skirts of the mother like a shy child, um, not really knowing what's going on, but kind of peeking out to see what's happening. And they it was also my perception that each of them, it was more like it wasn't like they were transitioning together. They were transitioning at the same time, having both made their choice. Um, but other times I've experienced in tunings that say like on miscarriages or abortions, that often the spirits of those babies, or the biofields of those babies, because they didn't exist on their own as a little child, that they become part of the mother, or they attach their energies to the mother's energy. And then as we clear, and those deep emotions of the mother clears in their loss, or of whatever emotions, or regrets, or just wanting to help, emotions from the abortions. Um, However, those emotions appear, and they're all good. We're all just clearing all of them. And then the baby becomes ready to transition and makes their own choice. Then the the child that did not live on its own, that was attached to the mother, is able to separate and transition on their own then, and free up that energy of the mother. Um, let's see. I'll go back to the mindset of ancestors. Um, Again, often they usually have the mindset that they had when they died, and so if they were unhappy people, or very distrustful, or just think the world is out to get them, type of thing, that definitely shows up in their attitude in biofield work, and in their in, say, like, their mind wants to transition, but it's like their energy is far, far from being ready to transition, and they're unable to make that transition then, until their mindset becomes closer and closer to that desire. I talked tapping into that desire within them, that's what they want, and making that conscious choice, and trusting in the knowledge that they gained of how things work, trusting source or universal energy. And so, um, like, sometimes ancestors might come to the sessions, and they want to transition, but they're totally unable, and they're and I can feel that in their energy, that vibration. And I say, no, I don't think you're ready yet. And then sometimes there's and I say, then you'll need to leave when we're done with the tuning. You need to leave, because I don't want the inner, if the ancestors are in the waiting place, or in nature yet around us, if they're not ready, and they're not close to having the mindset of God, and they're not ready to transition, then I don't want them in my home. I don't want them to influence my perception of my life, and or of my thoughts and intentions. And so that's a standing demand, standing intention, that unless they're ready to transition, they can't stay. And so sometimes then, from the start of the session to the end of the session, they're ready to clear, and they're ready to transition. At other times, they get to the end of the session and they're not ready, and they leave. Um, let's see. And if anyone in the chat ever has some links, or those of you watching the replay, you're welcome to ask questions, either by contacting me through the website, is an easy way, through the contact there. Or you can write a question in the conversation in the comments below, and if it's a short answer, I can answer there. If it's a longer answer, then I'll try to message you somehow, or I'll address it in a future email, or in here at the podcast. So anyway, other experiences. I wanted to talk about the afterlife a little bit. I've talked about how the ancestors, as they grow in these 5 things they need, that they grow closer and closer to having the mindset of source, and being ready to be part of the oneness, and being able to do so. So there's that part of the nature of the afterlife around us. But what I've also found is that because the ancestors in the afterlife around us still have the mindset of lack or hierarchy that causes them to want to control or manipulate things. It also, not all people are into the control or the manipulation, but part of that mindset of hierarchy isn't just wanting to rule over other people, but it's also the flip side of that, wanting to be ruled over, the powerlessness, right, of things that we feel in our lives. Sometimes some people feel very powerlessness. I did in my life. And so in the afterlife, then these people have these energies. But what I have found is that because hierarchy does not have everything on the level playing field like the oneness does, where everyone's equal with different roles, right? Different abilities, different gifts, but everyone's equal because we're all part of the whole. Whereas in the hierarchy, I mean, those in the afterlife nature around us, there are levels of hierarchy there. And some of the people that were into, say, the secret societies of different kinds in this life, then some of those societies train some of their people to meet them at the edge of death and what happens, and so that when they get to the afterlife and live there, then they help meet these people and draw them immediately, tell them this is where you need to be, or we'll help you, or whatever it is they tell them, and um, almost kind of trick them into, the ones that don't know. Now, the ones that do know what's going on, they would go willingly with them. Others who don't know, it's kind of the manipulation or not full disclosure of truth, and to take them with them into these different levels of hierarchy where they're controlled and not allowed to learn other things so that they can change their mindset and leave. They're wanting them to stay there. Um, I don't know if the afterlife, I have not received the um, or have the perception that they're actually using their energy for something particular, because I see them in grayscale, they don't have much energy. Although the ones that lead the hierarchy in the afterlife do have energy. It goes back to that um, knowledge is power. The more they know of the afterlife, the more they understand, which they had this training when in their lives. So they entered the afterlife knowing about it. And so their knowledge is great, their power is greater, but not near as great of the power as the ones who are ready to go to the oneness. And it's through the trickery, it's through the um, not full disclosure of truth that they keep the ancestors there with them in these different levels and prevent them from learning more and being able to go to the oneness when they're ready or into the next realm. It's not that the ancestors that are kept there um, are unable to, because really the universe works on the vibration of God, or the rules, so to speak, the rules of God. And so we have that power. Each person has to make their individual choice, whether it is to go to the waiting place and stay there or to go to the oneness. And so even those that are in the waiting place, they can make that decision. And a lot of them that I work with then do make the decision to leave those levels of hierarchy in the waiting place and eventually transition. So it's their choice that they're staying there. They're just not told. They're just not told that it's their choice. And or some of them are wanting to stay there because either because they don't have anything better to do, or they don't have the focus in their life of wanting to know more, or they're not ready to tap into their their own spirit, their own inner yearning, and follow that desire. And it's fun to um, work with those that are in the afterlife. The ones that are leading this hierarchy in the afterlife, they can be very, very, very angry, and the what I would call the fallen angels also become part of that and are very angry about it at times when I was helping. And then other times I can feel the shift through a tuning, feel the shift from, you find these ancestors, they're in the levels, and it's like I'm talking to them and they're learning how things work as we go through the tuning. And it's like I can feel the shift. It goes from, no, we're not interested, to, well, maybe sometime I might be, and to maybe a second or two tuning down the road. And then it's like, I'm ready. I want to go. And so that's fun. So I'll stop here. I have a question in the chat, and they're asking, are you tuning your departed ancestors just as you would tune anyone that is still alive? I tuned my ancestors as part of me. So I I I have before tuned them as their own separate hologram. I do not usually do that, and I only do that like if I know they're ready to go to the oneness, and I'm not um, tuning myself for some other reason or a client. Um, but otherwise, I'm kind of wanting to use my hands, but I don't know what to do with them. So otherwise, I tune my ancestors through me. So through the ancestral field, through their energies within me in the ancestral river. A lot of times I will what I call stack the biofields. So I'll work in both the ancestral field and my field at the same time by um, holding the intention that both myself, my own hologram, and their own hologram are together on the my massage table that I use, and then I tune all the holograms at the same time, as if we're all one person but different. I'm working in just one with the intention of working in all of them at the same time. And that works very effectively. Sometimes, if it's specific ancestral energy that needs to clear, I'm usually pulled into the ancestral field and work from the outer edge of the ancestral field all the way into my center being, and because it needs to clear, because they're holding on to stuff in there, and that's holding on inside of me. Whereas if it's just emotions in general that I've also experienced in my life, then most often tuning them at the same time I tune me clears their energy as well. So there is a distinction between when I'm called to work in the ancestral field, and when I just work out of um, the biofields being stacked, so to speak. But yeah, well, you're welcome. And so um, let's see. I would say just to rely on the spirit that we work in, to show you if you need to start in the ancestral field, and to show you where, because sometimes it's not always directly starting at the outer edge and working all the way in, covering all of it. Sometimes I'm pulled to just one place. It's like a specific place. It's like, go here, and so clear there, and then work through to the body. So just rely on your intuition and source to tell you, show you where you need to work to get the energy cleared that needs to be cleared. And the question, do you think I should use anything that belongs to them, like a watch, or put it on the tuning bed? Um, I don't think the word is should there. I've never done that. Um, and it works just the same, because they're there with my intention and their intention to allowed to be tuned or to want to transition. I don't think it probably ever hurts, um, unless it's, I don't know, it might, unless it's an item, that there was bad feelings. If they still harbor bad feelings toward that item, I don't know how you'd know if you know. Most of the time, probably it wouldn't matter anymore, once they've been in the afterlife a while, and they wouldn't care about that. Um, about if there was negative influence with a particular item, but an item is definitely not needed to do their clearing. It just works on intention, our love. And for me, as I named my business the Ancestral River, using the terms that are used in those streams of energy off either side of the body that are found in the biofield. But for me, the Ancestral River is really the love that connects us with the ancestors, and growing then in that love and in that relationship with the ancestors, um, um, after their life. It continues as they're in the oneness and they come to help me in different ways, or I can call on their wisdom, and or specific ones that I know were in, went through certain things that are similar to mine, or I ask which ancestor has experience with this that can help me with certain things. And just that relationship of love that develops in my willingness to help, and their decision and willingness to transition, and that shared love of the desire to be part of the oneness, to know our who we really are, in the universe, to know who we are and part of God, to use that term. And well, thank you, and just sharing my experiences here. And I appreciate it. It's been quite a journey in learning all that I'm learning, and every biofield session I do, I learn more. Um, just to mention on, I'm supposed to mention this. We carry also not just things from, well, our things from our ancestors, but it goes back millennia or however long it might be, right? Um, And so we also carry the world despair, or the sadness and grief and loss of that's of the overall in the world. And so I've experienced from ancestors that lived many generations ago. They lived when the giant trees were cut down on the earth, and it was just so sadness. And I knew I had cleared their energy before, and I had said, but why didn't you clear there? Because I know I cleared your energy before, you're same people, with that same sadness. And they had said their sadness and anger was too deep. They just weren't ready, they couldn't go. And so we carry that, and as we clear that grief and sadness that we carry from the universal energy and from the ancestors, from long ago, from specific things that happened, and that's of nature too, that I felt that despair of nature when the giant trees were cut. And um, it in many ways destroyed or disrupted how nature works, how the universal cycle of things that was supposed to be that way. And so there was very great sadness and anger. Um, and let's see, have you, another question in the chat, have you ever tuned your other incarnations? I have not tuned my past lives, specifically individual ones. It might be helpful to do so. It might be helpful to do that stacked with my own now, since that energy would be so much a part of mine. However, I do sometimes find the past life energy in the ancestral field very easily and can tune it that way. And so I have not tuned specifically one incarnation. I have been told through um, natal chart readings and oracle card readings that, and through intuition perceptions of people that say perhaps have a much greater um, um, connection, a higher voltage connection with the ancestors or angels, a different perception than I do, that I've walked by them and they looked at me and said, you know, we can tell you lived many lives and you have a wound right up here, as if this is where you were shot with a bow and arrow and you died from it, or something like that. Maybe I mean, I haven't experienced all my past lives. I have had memory of some, or certain parts of some. But no, I have not tuned them specifically, although I tune them as part of the ancestral field. I just hold that I'm clearing for ancestors and past lives and my current life. So there's so much about the afterlife that we don't know yet, that I have no idea. And because we all go through life with our own perception, that's how we're going to perceive the experiences we have and the things that we learn from other people. We're going to see those through our own eyes. And so I'm not saying that everything that I see and have felt describing the ancestors in the afterlife is what you're going to see. It's what I perceive through my own vision and explain it to the best of my ability. And you might perceive things differently. I know some people perceive or have the understanding or memory of being star seeds from another planet or from a star. Others perceive it as reptilian, and other things, I don't know. They might all be true as I learn more and more about the old world that existed, that we're not told anything about, but evidence exists all around us and is not part of our history that any of us are taught in our lives. And the more I learn and study that and watch and question and things, then um, oh, I forgot where I was going with that. Um, I realized, a lot of those old world buildings have what you could call reptilian features, or half man, half animal statues made. And it very well may be because they also show people that look a little differently than we do, as well as people that look like us. And so, um, were they just dreaming and making these all different on all parts of, statues throughout the world that all have similarities? Or were they um, building or shaping statues to look as creatures or people that they saw back then? And so, uh, there probably were many different types of um, humans, as well as many different types of non-human types of individuals that were part of the Earth experience, or from other uh, parts of the Earth, or that come and have lived here at one time. So I do not know. I just know that it's extremely interesting to hear about and learn about and think on and wonder. and ask. And so wherever your questioning is taking you, I encourage you to ask of spirit. Ask through meditation. Spiritual hypnosis has been very helpful to me in answering my questions, um, from a spirit, or for spirit, for the angels. And so I just encourage you, go wherever your spirit is taking you. That's part of expressing your individuality. And again, that's extremely important. I think we all have to, it's mandatory, it's imperative that each of us follow our own spirit guidance, not just the guidance of our mind. I mean, the mind is needed, it's very important, it's very powerful, but to follow your spirit or your heart in fully expressing all your own interests and what you're interested in this life, and making that come into reality in the way that only you can, because it's only as we become all we are meant to be that the universe becomes all it is meant to be. And one more question here, and then I'll probably close for the day. Asking if I use any crystals or other energies as I do my tunings. And yes, I have a plethora of crystals that I just keep on my hologram all the time. I figure all the energies of nature were ours to for our benefit, and so and they're all helpful in many ways. So I just leave probably, I don't know, 20 of them or more in my hologram at all times. Sometimes I use them in different ways. Sometimes I would strike my fork on them or put forks on them to enhance that energy. Sometimes I use a crystal in the field with the forks. Sometimes there's other energies that are called to be used too at different times, like other sounds. Beside tuning forks, I often use my voice, my singing, or chanting, as you can tell in my free weekly biofields that I'm starting to do. And other times it's musical instruments, tambourines or sticks that you bang together. Sometimes colors are really pulled in. And I had this experience that was really great. And as I talk about this, you'll know who I'm talking about. But uh, I had a client who was someone mutual that we both know, this other lady and I, and the client was a mutual acquaintance of both of ours. And I was just starting her tuning, and I was really pulled. I knew I had to add something else. The spirit was showing me, and it was like it wasn't anything my typicals. And what I was led to grab was a beautiful, colorful um, card, greeting card that I'd received from my friend, who we have this mutual acquaintance, and that her energy was supposed to be part of this, that tuning of the mutual acquaintance, and not to do any clearing for that friend, but just those intentions and her um, mindset and uh, deep desires that were part of, to help clear the energy for the mutual acquaintance of my client that I had. And so that was all. It's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful life. There is so much that we don't know. And I look forward to learning a lot more as I go through life and sharing with you. And thank you in the chat there also for your questions. I appreciate it. And thanks for watching, everyone. We'll catch you next week. Bye bye.